Het-Heru, namaste. This is Het-Heru here with another broadcast for you. Let me just adjust this mic. I want to talk to you today about an interesting topic, how to control your mate. And I love doing broadcasts on relationships and dating and things like that because I've always find them very interesting in how people get together, how they live their lives, and how they get along, or if they don't get along, and what they like, what they're looking for, all of that stuff. I find it just very interesting, and I read a lot on the subject matter, especially in terms of ancient cultures and like how are we hooked up, how do we get married, what are the traditions, because I find it fascinating in comparison to modern day society. But anyway, let's get to the subject matter at hand. I want to talk briefly. I don't know if I covered this in a previous video. I want to talk briefly about the types of relationships you can be in. And for those of you who are very interested in this, you can take it a bit deeper. If you're dating somebody or about to date somebody, you can actually see how you'll work with each other, how the relationship will go by looking at the astrological charts, or learning the Bagua, the Chinese Bagua, which allows you to combine your hexagram with their hexagram and see how the relationship will kind of like pan out. And it really is pretty accurate. I think I talked about this before, but it's great because you'll see where the pitfalls are. As always, I talk about, if you're going to get into a relationship, especially a spiritual relationship, what you should do is use an oracle, all right? And I'm not necessarily talking about a tarot, because that's more of a prediction device, or just for seeing how something will unfold. But I'm talking about something like the Ifa or the I-Ching or Meduna tarot cards, because those will really give you good counseling on how to maintain the relationship. Because the I-Ching, one thing about the I-Ching oracle is a Chinese oracle system that makes use of Yarway sticks or Chinese coins. One thing about that is that it always seeks to bring people together. It's never seeking to give one person an advantage over the other. So when you get into a relationship with your mate, one of the good things to do is to say, listen, if we're going to take this spiritual journey together, that because that's what your relationship is about. It's kind of a spiritual journey. You tell them, you say, listen, we need to agree that the oracle has the final word, or if we have an argument, we go to the oracle and let the oracle decide which way do we go, or who is right in the situation. And you'll always find the oracle is very fair in that sense. You know what I mean? So that's for another class to get into how to use the oracle in a relationship. But again, if your mate does not agree to use the oracle and you can't force them, then you got some issues going on there. That could be challenging right there, because you need an objective arbitrator. You need somebody who can just sit on the sidelines and give you advice. A lot of times what I prescribe is that you, if you get into a relationship, have a priest or a diviner that you and your mate can go to. There was a good friend of mine who got married, and I recommended a priest that he goes to see. It was a Kemetic priest, to get advice, because as soon as they got married, things started getting really rocky. And they both went, they got counseling, and the priest did the oracle reading and all that. So that could be something else too. If you don't want to do the oracle reading in your house, you can go to a diviner and have somebody that you trust and you see often, and because they need to build a relationship with you and get to know you and your mate. And they will do the readings for you. And then still the agreement has to be that your mate has to be open-minded and agree to adhere to the counseling. Because that's very important, because if you look at ancient times, one of the reasons why the relationships lasted in ancient times was because of the fact there was this respect and reverence for the community, for the high priest. So whatever they said, you abide by, and the oracles as well. But more importantly, the community looked after your relationship. Your community made sure that your mate wouldn't cheat, your mate wasn't talking to other people behind your back or spending too much time with somebody, because the community doesn't want them being put into a situation where something spontaneously can happen that can lead to so-called falling in love with somebody else, or sparking an attraction with somebody else. So the community had really strict guidelines on how the relationship was conducted and how much time you spent away from each other, you know, and it was really defined responsibilities and roles according to cosmologics, right? And speaking of cosmologics, let's go over the 3 types of relationships real quick before I go into how to control your mate, and I'll explain what that title is all about. The 3 types of relationship, I'm pulling this out of the pantheon of the gods, the Egyptian Kemetic gods, or the tree of life, or what we call the Het-Heru. You have Ma'at, you have Set, and Het-Heru. Now, there's more types of relationships than that, but those are the basic 3 that you will encounter. And your relationship could be one of those, a mixture of those, you know, 2 of those, or even 3 of them. The first is Ma'at. Ma'at we know is truth, justice, balance, righteousness, the law. But more importantly, Ma'at is love. Ma'at is God's love. So that love is giving, seeking nothing in return. So an individual that you meet that is kind of a Ma'at individual will love you for reals, for reals. It's a deep spiritual love. But however, there's a trade-off. It won't be a very affectionate relationship. This person, because I think Ma is a cold, moist energy. All right. So she can be very cold, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't love you or he doesn't love you. That's just their energy. All right. So it's a very cold type of love where you're not getting a lot of affection, or the person that's saying, I love you often, and things of that nature. But rest assured, this person has a deep love for you. And it's a love that doesn't require you to give anything in return. They love you no matter what. And that's kind of God's love, because God loves us all, irrespective of what we do. God is not saying, you know, because how many times have we cursed God out or said, I hate you, God, for giving me this life? No matter what you do, how many times you curse God out, or how many times you hate, you know, who hates God, God still loves you. Because God's not a God of the Bible. That's some fictitious nonsense that was written, brimstone and fire, and I'm a jealous God and you must do this. No, the real God, source, Het-Heru, Nebuchadnezzar, Allah, Yahweh, is all that there is, and it is complete. It is abundance. So God has never-ending love. So God loves you no matter what you do. Okay, and there's a relationship that you have with God, and it's not like you're children of God. You're not a child. God looks at you as you're part of God, not in quantity, but in quality. So you have to understand that you are God man, God woman, and you're striving to get back into that position of Osir, through many lifetimes, and discovering your power and who you are as a spiritual being. So that's a Ma'at relationship. So if you're going to get into a Ma'at relationship, that's going to be a very challenging relationship, because it's not going to be filled with roses and flowers and romance and things of that nature, but it will be a very deep, loving relationship. The next relationship is a Het-Heru or Hathor. And Het-Heru is a goddess of love, romance, flirtation, and things of that nature. She governs sex and all that great things. So a Het-Heru relationship is very, very romantic. It's very affectionate, very affectionate. Het-Heru is not about giving, seeking nothing in return. Het-Heru is like, no, you got to tell me you love me. You got to give me roses. You know, you got to tell me how sweet and beautiful I look. That's a Het-Heru relationship. And those are really great relationships. It can be very superficial relationships sometimes in its negative aspect. But those are great relationships because you get a lot of affection. And it's all about external appearances too, looking nice, smelling nice. So keep that in mind. The next one is Set or Isis. Now, you know the story about Sarah and Set. Set demonstrates supreme devotion for her husband, her mate, Osir, when he was killed by Set and cut up into 14 pieces and distributed throughout the world. Set, when everybody in Kemet thought all was lost, Set kept hope, and she went and gathered the pieces. She was devoted to travel faraway land and gather the pieces of Osir and put them together, and he was resurrected. So Set is a devoted, loving, and nurturing, keyword is nurturing relationship. So you have somebody who's an Set person, they're going to be, you know, really there to help you with your needs, nurturing you, and very devoted to you. This is not the type of person that will cheat on you. You know what I mean? This is the type of person that it's to the death. You know, they'll die for you. So that's a very devoted type thing. So that's the three types of relationships from the Egyptian pantheon, or the Tree of Life, Port Neteru. And so when you're meeting somebody and you're hooking up with somebody, think about where they fit in, you know, and also look at their sign, their sun sign, and see how it matches up with you. And there's abundance of books you can get which talks about how different signs combine and work together. So let's look at let's talk about this really interesting subject, which is how to control your mate. Now, this is the deal on that, right? You know, we all get into relationships and find that people change. You know, sometimes things are going well in a relationship, you're moving together, and you find the person is not the same person. You know, or things start to get really rocky, or you were dating for a year or 2 years, and then you get married and everything falls to pieces. Why does these things happen? You know, and you know, a lot of people will say, well, I saw a different side of them, or I didn't know they were like this, or they get freaky, you know, they wanted to have an orgy or a threesome. I think this person was like that, you know, or they turned out to be into drugs or really psychotic, you know, or just that we find that we just don't mesh anymore, you know. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But let me just cover something. I'm going to take a step back for a second. There is a spiritual teacher who teaches, sorry, I'm going to take some ice cream here. There's this guy, he's a spiritual teacher, and he talks about relationships, right? And I got to call this guy out because he has no idea what he's talking about. And he has like a lot of followers, and these individuals like listen to everything he says. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him. I'm like, man, this guy has no, and he doesn't know how relationships are supposed to work. He's giving out all this advice. And most of his advice is, it's the male's fault. It's the man's fault. It's this. I'm like, whoa, dude, where are you? What? And he doesn't understand how social engineering is constructed to destroy relationships, to destroy the nuclear family. And you have to be aware of that. You have to take that factor into consideration. You know, you have to understand that. And I'm just amazed that he, you know, I'm watching him, I continue to watch him. And, you know, every time I tune in, it just gets more shocking, the advice he's giving. I'm like, this man knows absolutely nothing about spirituality and what he's talking about. So anyway, one day I'll call him out by name, because I'm like, you got to stop this, because people are coming to you and you're giving this incorrect advice. And a lot of the, you'll find the same thing happens with a lot of these ministers in the churches, the mega churches especially. They know that the majority of their congregation is women. So they'll tailor their sermons, or, you know, the lectures or whatever, toward women, and they always take the responsibility off the women in the congregation. So it's never their fault, and they'll say things like, you know, God has a man for you. You just keep doing the good things you're doing, and he will come into your life when God is ready for him to come into your life. No, you're lying to them. You have to tell these women that they're doing things wrong. You know what I mean? They're forever picking the wrong type of man, because they're caught up in seeing things only one way. So they have a certain type that they like, and every man they pick is that type, which is why they can't keep the man, or they have problems in the relationship. But anyway, I'm digressing again. But that, you know, you've got to speak truth. And even if you're speaking the truth and lose some people in your congregation, people will grow from that seed you plant. You cannot continue to tell them just the things they want to hear, and screw their heads up and have the world in an even worse situation than it is. All right, so as I was saying before, you're with somebody, you know, you dated them, or you're going out with them, but suddenly you found that they changed. How is that? What is the deal? Well, what you've got to understand is a couple of things. Number one, you have to understand that you are God man, God woman, and that you have some control over your mate in terms of metaphysical control. I'm not talking about physical control where you grab them and do all this. What we don't understand is that you can change a person's behavior simply by sitting down and meditate and visualizing that person acting in the way that you want them to act. That's objective meditation. And because you have a close tie and relationship with them, if you look at the I Ching has a 61st hexagram, which calls inner truth, and it talks about how energy resonates and how you can communicate with people from afar and they understand and feel what you're feeling. So in other words, if you're close to your mate, you have an opportunity to stop and pull back. If your guys are getting through, if you're going through arguments, if you're going through disagreements, it's not going to work to try and get a person to see your perspective, especially in a relationship, because there's going to be a butting of heads, especially if you come from two different religions or have different political beliefs and things of that nature. But what you can do is sit down calmly in meditation, and you can watch some of my other videos on meditation, and see your mate and you having a harmonious relationship, maybe a Het-Heru relationship, you know, or a half-floor relationship. And it's very important that in the visualization, when you do the meditation, that you actually feel the emotions of it being harmonious. All right. And that is really what you want to do. Don't visualize yourselves arguing, or don't visualize yourself being right. And she's saying, "Oh, you're so right, honey." No, see the relationship just going smoothly in your meditation. And you've got to reach a deep state of trance. So that's important, because a lot of people, they do trance, they do meditation, and they don't go deep enough, and they don't get the results, and they think it doesn't work. The technique doesn't work. The technique works is that you have to go into that deep state where you're almost asleep, but you're not asleep and you're not awake. You're in that in-between state, to where your will still has control of the visualizations and the post-hypnotic suggestions or the truisms that you'll feed yourself, right? And you can say things, if you want, verbally to yourself in that state of trance, because when you get into that middle state, that's what we call is a trance state. You can give yourself positive truisms or affirmations that say, you know, and make sure it's always in the present, that my mate and I have a wonderful relationship. Things are going well for us. Isn't it nice to have a great relationship? Isn't it nice to be so much in love, right? And now what you're going to find out through the course of maybe a week or 2 weeks, that their behavior will start to change. All right. And you'll notice the changes. Now, here's the key. When you notice the change in them, continue and move on to the next thing. So, for example, if one thing that upsets you about your mate, they suck their teeth a lot, just say, for example, and they eat too much chocolate cake. Those are two things that annoy you, right? So if you're doing the meditations, you'll notice they won't be sucking their teeth anymore, but they'll still eat the chocolate cake. So then start your meditations focusing on them not eating the chocolate cake. I'm just giving you crazy examples, okay? So the key thing is to look for the sign that one thing has changed, and that will instill within you the belief and faith to continue on doing the meditations. Now, if you can get your mate to do meditations with you, that is awesome. If they'll sit down and do the meditations, that's even more powerful, but you don't have to. You can, and this also applies for anyone. If you have a boss that's giving you trouble, if you have parents that are giving you trouble, if you have friends that you have a conflict with a friend, sit down and meditate and seeing the relationship being healed. All right. And you should also do an oracle reading with the I-Ching to find out what you need to do and maybe what you're doing wrong. All right. So now let me get into the real mystical, metaphysical aspect of this to tell you exactly what's going on here. The people that you see before you, everyone, your friends, family members, acquaintances, colleagues, coworkers, whatever, they are avatars. They are representations that you have created in this fourth dimensional experience to interact with. They are not, as we would say, real people. They are not. They are merely figures there to you for you could. It's like the Star Trek holodeck. It's a creation. It's a matrix, so that you can have an interaction with a 3D holograph. All right. With that said, that means that if you understand that you have created them, and you have created these scenarios in your life so you can interact with and gain the experience, then you know that you can control them to a degree, because there's a destiny that you're going, there's a destiny and the plan you have to follow. So you have not 100% control of them, but you do have some control. So as you, when you understand that, and that has to be a core belief, you have to really, if you don't believe that, the first thing, this is the default core belief. If you don't believe that, then nothing else can work. None of this stuff I'm teaching you or telling you about is going to work, because your default core belief believes that everything is real. So therefore, any meditation you do is not going to be effective. So when you understand that you're creating these things and that they're just a projection of your own consciousness, then you know that you have power. Now you can test this in a very eerie, weird way. I can give you a little bit of this nugget, this gold nugget here to work with, is that if you are in a certain hyper state of excitement and inner happiness, if you, let's say, for example, if you're walking in a crowded street and you just have something happen, and it has to be something really exciting and get you in a hyper state. Let's say you hit the lotto and got $10,000, right? If you look down first and then look up at the people, you will notice that many of the people are looking directly at you and staring at you. And there's this conscious connection between you and them. That is the glitch in the matrix, okay? That's when you know that these people are characters who are now, who you are aware of. And because now you noticed them, they noticed you back. So that is telling you right there that there are only representations of people and not the people themselves. But the people themselves do exist. All right. So think about that. You being consciously aware and in a certain state or trance state triggers something to where the people become consciously aware and connect to your consciousness, and you can see them looking at you, and consciousness connects, which is already connected, but it solidifies that connection on a different level. And you'll see people just looking at you in this weird gaze. And some people say, well, it's the energy you're giving off. No, it's not the energy you're giving off. It's that that's the degree of control that you have over the avatars that you created in your fourth dimensional world, or your 3D world, whichever one you want to call it. All right. So as I said before, you can sit down, meditate, and you see yourself with your mate, having a good time. Things are proceeding great. And the first sign that you see of change should be the pivotal point that you should increase your meditations and work on the next thing. Now, this is what happens, and I'll explain this. It's a lot of different things and cause this. And you're working with, you hook up with somebody, you fall in love, or things are going really well, and suddenly you feel they've changed and the relationship is sour, right? So why did it do that? And I'll explain why it did that, right? Sorry about this. All right, so you're living in a multiverse. And there are different representations of you in different parallel universes, right? And all things exist at once in the same space time, all right? Because time is an illusion. So if you understand that, then you must also understand that in a sense, we're making quantum jumps or quantum leaps to parallel universes all the time. You know, the act of motion is an indication that the only way that you can have this motion is that you're leaping from parallel universe to universe to universe. That's why you have motion, because really everything's a still, kind of like a still image, a moment in time, because the only thing that exists is a moment. There's no past and there's no future. So that moment exists. And for that moment to have motion, you keep continually jumping to different parallel worlds, okay? Now, when you make that jump, things are different. So if I'm making one jump into a different planet Earth, I will know right away because I've become very sensitive to it. I'll know and I'll feel it. I'll say, this is, and I'll feel it only in the sense that it was a radical change. I won't feel it because if you jump into a parallel universe that's very similar to the one you were in before, you won't necessarily feel it. You won't know it. Okay. But when you do know it is when you make a gigantic leap to something that's really different, and you'll feel it. This is where we get, like, people talk about the Mandela effect, things like that things are changed. You know what I mean? And I become very sensitive to that. And I'll say, okay, something has changed. I must have jumped really far this time. Right now, when you jump, understand that you're now interacting with people and you're not the same person anymore. All right. And they're different. Now, you were with, let's go back to Earth Prime, where you were before. All right. When you were with your mate and then you said that your mate changed, yes, your mate did change. They're a different person now because he or she may have quantum leaped. They may have jumped. And now the person that you're dealing with is a different person. They're not the same person that they were before. So there is a change. Get it? There's a change now. So you're not dealing with the same person anymore. And I tell people that all the time. And they say, oh, you know, having trouble arguments. And I said, well, your mate, it's not the same mate. It's not the same person anymore. You're dealing with a different person because you're jumping into parallel universes. And when you jump, you change. You know, so that's one reason why you could be having difficult situations in your relationship with a person. It's not the only reason why that could be happening, but it's one reason to understand that could be it. Now, when I talked about before how you're meditating, you're seeing yourself have a harmonious relationship, what you're really doing is you're jumping to a parallel world where you're jumping into that universe where the mate that you want and that you can have a harmonious relationship exists. But that jump may take time. This is why I say when you notice the first change, that should give you the inspiration to keep meditating. So I'm just trying to draw a little thing. I don't know if you guys can see this because it was really light there. So you got to start at A, right? So you can't, and the mate you want to have that harmonious relationship is at Z, right? But you don't have enough power to leap, to jump to that parallel world Z. So you've got to make the small jumps first. So you got to go here, bam. Okay, meditate more, change, bam, here, and then bam at Z. So that's why I say when you see the change in your mate, that's a good indication that things are going in the right direction. Meditate more, and then bam, you'll leap again. And then you see another change, that's 2 changes. Then you say, great, things are really working. Let me meditate more, and bam, until I hit the final destination of where my mate and I are having a very good relationship. Things are never better. It's all music, and the Cupid is coming and shot us with the arrow and all that, you know. So I hope that explains a little bit on how you can control your mate. In other words, you have some say in how the avatars you create, which is your mate, how they respond and act in this holographic world that you created too. So it's all Maya. It's all an illusion. Okay, it's not real. But if you accept the default programming that it's real, which means it carries with it a belief system that means that I am an individual separate from the world, separate from the universe. I have no say in how things unfold in this world. If you accept that belief, then there's nothing you will be able to do to change your mate, to change your job, to change your boss, to change your situation. All right? So this is what we've all done. We have all, in this Western world, or in this, we'll just say this world itself, this planet Earth, that we've all drank the Kool-Aid. So most of the people who are now operating on a left brain frequency believe that they are separate individuals. So understand this, there's 2 parts to you. There is you that experiences experiences reality, we call it in quotes, as an individual. And then there is you that is experiencing things in a, let's say, a whole view, meaning you can see the masses of different lives and everything like that. So you have an individual perspective and you have the whole perspective as well, all right? Because you're really experiencing infinite lives all at once. And God does that. God can comprehend everything at once. It's a totality of existence. But you, as this individual in this 4th dimensional reality, cannot conceive or cannot experience everything at once. For that, you have to go to maybe the 5th and 6th dimensions, maybe, if you can do that. You know what I mean? That's also what we call is the oversoul, because then there's you, and you transmit the information on the experience in this life to the oversoul, and the oversoul is over all of the lives, collecting information on experiences so that Nectar and Source can better understand its infinite potential. You know, it has infinite power, but it doesn't have the experience, so it creates this world and universe to interact with to gain the experience. All right, because when God was conscious, it was only one. And when you're only one, which is God, there's nothing to interact with. So even though God is powerful, there's no experience from that because it can't interact with anything. So God from one has to become two. And therefore, then you have something to interact with because God steps back and looks at itself. And in looking at itself, it now perceives that the one is now two. And then the two becomes the three, kind of like the Holy Trinity. And then from there, then God lays down what? Ma'at, the law. And then from the law, it governs how the planets will rotate, where the stars will be in fixed positions, how gravity will work, how dark matter is supposed to work, and where black holes will be at the center of the universe, and things of that nature. All right. So understand that you are one with all that there is because you have created all that there is. And you have a say in how it unfolds to a degree. And with that is, we see a lot of times, I see people in relationships where sometimes it's so toxic to where they're arguing a lot and it's almost on the verge of physical violence. And I say, look, step back and meditate. Now, here's the key. Let's say you do as Kassan says to do. You can step back and you meditate, and you even get your mate to meditate with you, and you do it for 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and nothing happens. They don't change. So you say, oh, the technique doesn't work. No, there's a reason why it doesn't change. Let me give you this example. There's a time I was living, I'm not going to say exactly where, but I was living in this city, and the neighborhood that wasn't really that great. And, I didn't like the people. I thought the people were just very rude and very ratchet and low-minded, right? And it wasn't like drug infested or anything like that. I just felt that the people, I like to be around people who care about one another, or just have some sense of class and self-respect. And these people were just like borderline ratchet, right? So I was like, you know what, and I had to interact with a lot of them, And so I said, let me just, and I worked at this, we'll call it a community center, where I was helping young guys become men and teach them about manhood. And I just found that their frame of reference and things, they just had this very low mind of things, and they argued a lot. But it was an argument over just really, really petty stuff. And I just couldn't believe that, they argue over that kind of stuff. So I said, let me meditate and see them acting in accord, in a harmonious way. So I meditated, and for weeks, for months, nothing changed, right? And then I began to realize, I said, the reason something may not change is because it serves you. There's a need for that. And then what I began to realize is that I needed to move. I needed to get out of that environment. I needed to move, all right? So I ended up moving, and it was great. I moved to a very, very, I moved to Midwest, and it was great. Everything worked out really well. So that's an indication that if you're having difficulties with this mate that you're with, and you meditated and you've done all the exercises and nothing's changed, it may be time to look at moving on, finding someone else, because when things aren't changing, when they should be changing, that's an indication that it's serving you. It may be a message to you to tell you that, hey, you know what? You've done all that you can do in this situation. It's time now to move on. And in moving on, you'll grow, and that person will grow, because sometimes you can be very spiritual, the person you're with is not, but yet the things that you say may not seem that they're really taking it in and understanding it, but it may take an incubation time. It may flower within them years later, and they'll appreciate you years from now, But until that happens, you can't be in a relationship with them, because it's toxic and detrimental. So, when we look at things like, and I've always said that, only thing that exists is a now moment, that if you change your belief system, the past and the future will change, because they're contextual, right? So some people say, well, if for example, if Jews, start meditating upon not being oppressed through anti-Semitism, does that mean that the Holocaust would suddenly change to a new history? Technically, yes. The answer to that is yes. But because maybe that serves in their destiny as a collective people, that memory or that event still stays there in this present space-time continuum. So if African Americans have said, you know what, we're tired of being oppressed. We're not going to accept the belief system of being inferior based on our color. And based on that, according to your teachings, then the past should change so that we no longer have a past of slavery and Jim Crow and all the things of that nature, and apartheid or separation or segregation. And I'm like, well, yes, true, it should change. But if it doesn't change, that means that history, slavery, serves you in some way, maybe as a way of growing spiritually from that horrific event. You know what I mean? So we have to look at that. And, you know, just like if you're going through a traumatic experience, right? And if I were to come to you and it really traumatized you, but you managed to deal with it, right? If I come to you and I say, you know what, I can wipe your memory of that traumatic experience, right? But if I do that, you're not going to be the same person. And that wealth of information that you gain from the experience, you will lose that, and you stand a chance of repeating the same mistake. And I hope this is all making sense to you. So this is kind of what relationships are about. You're growing from each relationship that you get involved with, and you're using that experience and knowledge to further the next relationship and to do better in the next relationship. So, you know, and sometimes, you know, when somebody, you say, changes in a relationship, there may be no way of getting them back to where they were, or you taking that leap to the reality that you want them to be harmonious. You may not be able to take that leap. So your only recourse may be just to leave the relationship. And before you do that, I will do oracle reading to make sure that leaving the relationship is what the oracle or God prescribes, and it's the best thing to do. So go see a diviner, and then you would ask the diviner, do I need to part ways from this relationship? And the same way with a job. You know, if you're at a job you think it's not going anywhere, and you've done your meditation, you've done as hard work as you can, it may just be time for you to move on and start putting your resume out there and your feelers out there. You know what I mean? You know, and I counsel a lot of filmmakers and actors, and they may be in a city where they're not getting work, and they're really hitting the pavement. They're going to auditions, nothing's panning out. And I said, well, then you need to start looking at maybe changing, relocating. That may be, you know, the mere fact that you're not getting work doesn't mean that you're not talented, but it may be that this is trying to send you a message. This is serving you in some way that you don't need to be in this city. You need to move to somewhere else where the opportunities are abundance, and you will get known. And you know, because when you change cities, that also changes your destiny in a way. Things do change radically, you know? And even if you make the change, and you got to have that's what my art is about, having a light heart. You got to have a light heart about things. Even if you do something and you feel maybe it was a mistake, have a light heart about it, and don't beat yourself over the head, because you're allowed in this lifetime to make some mistakes. You know what I mean? We all do the best we can do, you know? So I hope this has been of help to you, and I hope you can take this knowledge and have a better relationship, and just learn to love each other the Ma'at way, even though you may be at each other's throat. You know what I mean? Still learn to love each other and understand, you know, when it's time to wave the white flags and say, let's make love and not war, you know? And make up sex is always great, you know? So if you can fight and make up, that's awesome, you know, do it that way. So if you've liked this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel to get more exciting information. And until next time, this is Kasant Ma Keparu, and Amen Ra.